Welcome to the Business and Enterprise Systems Mission Success Podcast, where we give you a look into the things happening in BES and other topics of interest. And today we have a great guest, Mr. Bill Kramer, who is the Chief of Cybersecurity Services. Mr. Kramer, good day to you, sir. How are you?
Hey, John. Hey, I'm doing well and appreciate the invite. Hopefully we can cover some decent topics for everybody to understand and maybe ask me in the hallway if there's any more details that they want to know. But yeah, I'm looking for the time together and you know, hopefully I can clear up some things for
Yeah,
our teammates.
yeah. Well, we're excited to get into this. We're recording this in the middle of October, which is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Is that what you're supposed to say to
Absolutely. This is kind of been going on since I want to say 2003. October has been the month for cybersecurity. You know, it's kind of been quiet, but I think we're starting to pick up some traction and more people are coming on board. We started our monthly newsletter and for the month of October, because it is cybersecurity awareness, we'll put out our second edition this month to try to give some people more insights on what they're doing with their systems, maybe as it pertains to AI, artificial intelligence, or whether, Cloud One or different entities that hopefully will help explain things. And if not, maybe pique some curiosity so they'll ask the questions. So yeah, uh, look out October, right? It's a great opportunity to share some of the things we have for cybersecurity.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you taking the time today because not only our BES teammates, but we'll have others that will check out this conversation and see what they can learn. So let's get into this. Cybersecurity is really more than just protecting data. So as a cybersecurity professional, what comes to mind when I ask you, what is the BES cybersecurity role?
So thanks, John. Yeah, so cybersecurity is really broad, but I would like to kind of skinny it down as a cybersecurity professional, living in this today's shark-infested cyber world, this digital domain that we all live in. Our mission is to really try to stay ahead of the bad guys, right? Our adversaries, and try to keep our enterprise safe. And our enterprise, that includes our networks, our hosting environments, our applications, our services, the Internet of Things, right? And not only within business enterprise systems, but because we do so much telework, we really need to be conscious about that in our home network too, right? Because we connect to that as well, even though we use VPN and such. But let's start to understand. We in our role, we need to understand how to test an application, whether it's through physical means or through the use of tools. We need to, identify vulnerabilities associated with that system or devices, and also understand the impact to a program if and when they may be attacked. Also understand the many ways our defenses can be breached, and putting that into place, the protections needed to help maintain a secure, resilient cybersecurity posture. It's a huge effort and critically important to the well-being of our enterprise, our cyber defense, and our mission and our people, right? Because we do trade PII, HIPAA information, and you know we all like to get a paycheck, and then with paychecks we share your personal account information. So I think if you look at it, we not only touch our enterprise, but we touch probably just every member of the Air Force, not just BES.
And that's a big picture enterprise, your role in cyber as a professional. But what do you think about cybersecurity when it comes to your mind?
Uh,
Your home, your
yeah, so let's get down to the brass tacks here, right? So when cybersecurity comes to my mind, I really want to talk about, and even when I make a decision, I want to talk about attack surface, attack vectors, security breaches. Of course, there's several other things we talk about, vulnerability, stuff like that. But if you don't mind, I want to get into a little bit more detail on like the attack surface, because I don't think people understand what that really means. Because you'll hear cybersecurity people talk about it, but maybe the general populace don't understand what we're talking about. So if you don't mind, an attack surface is where an attack can occur. So if you take Okay, so if you take an X and Y graph, where the X-axis lists all your devices, maybe your applications, your services, your interfaces, maybe some Internet of Things within your enterprise. And then you take the Y-axis and you start listing all the different breach methods, such as unpatched software, cross-site scripting, SQL injection, maybe poor encryption or misconfiguration. Anyway, you start to graph that and align, the X-axis and the Y-axis, and you plot all that. This plot is actually your attack surface. So you can imagine, in the Air Force, we have all these systems, all these devices, all these networks, and we have multiple ways to attack. So that attack surface is fairly large in the Air Force. And of course, we skinny it down by, we do it down to the hosting environment, we do it down to the application, and that kind of helps drives us where we're going to spend some time to help plug some of our issues or vulnerabilities and to point us in the right direction to fix things. The other thing I talked about was attack vectors, and this is really methods used by our attackers to breach or infiltrate our entire network or our systems or services. They enable hackers to exploit system vulnerabilities, weaknesses, and just open doors that we just either forgot about or we are lazy to close or didn't shut the door behind us. So some of those attack vectors may include like compromised credentials, right? We don't do a lot of password, username password, but there's still some out there and they could be compromised. Another big one we look at is malicious insiders, right? We all think about the Snowden and all the stuff that he did as part of passing data, stuff like that. But even a malicious insider could do stuff like just delete data or change some bits on the data so it does something poor. The other thing we may look at attack vectors is poor encryption, because we trade data. Do we have encryption in place between systems? A common one for us is just sometimes we either have misconfiguration of our software and hardware, or we have unpatched software and hardware. And maybe I'll talk about that if we get in talk about open source stuff, but just stuff like that we need to patch. And we're getting better at that, but that's just an area that we needed to look at as part of our attack vectors. One you hear in the news a lot is phishing, and ransomware. These are other attack vectors that are commonly used in industry. And again, I have, I see phishing all the time on some of the networks I deal with, and although people are very, usually conscious, but sometimes they get through and we don't realize impact until later down the road. The other thing, I think the third part I was talking about was security breaches, right? So nobody wants to talk about a security breach, but the fact is if it hasn't happened, it's going to happen. And so what are we going to do about it? We need to understand the sensitivity of the data. How is it protected? What type of data is it? Classified, unclassified? What happens if it's, just accessed by a rogue user, or if it's actually stolen by an unauthorized party, right? So these are the kinds of things that when I talk about my role, I'm really looking at those three things. And attack, when I talk about security breaches, that can also be in the form of like 0-day vulnerabilities, right? You'll hear about, oh, we need to patch something because we have a 0-day vulnerability. Maybe a brute force attack, or maybe a lot of people understand denial of service attacks. Even in our home network, we have malware issues or insider threats. So all these things play into and roll up into those three things, the attack surface, attack vectors, and security breaches. And again, there's many other things, but those are the three things that correlates everything back to me when it comes to cybersecurity.
Yeah. Three big issues there, and I appreciate you sharing that, but I'm sure your job, your role and title is much more than three big rocks, but thank you for giving us some clarity on that. But
yeah,
cybersecurity is an organizational problem. It's not just a technical problem. So There's a study that was done by Stanford University, and it revealed that 88% of data breaches were caused by employee mistakes. Now, I'm not going to confess all my dirty laundry here, but many years ago, a different organization, sure, I clicked on the wrong email, but what are some of the challenges that you face with human error when it comes to cybersecurity?
Yeah, so let me start with you're absolutely correct. Cybersecurity is an organizational problem, and it should be everybody's problem, right? We all need to be mindful, and I know we ask people to take certain training and stuff like that. I think we could do some more on that side of the house. But again, as I mentioned, it doesn't stop at our office door or the gate of the base, right? Um, we have in this telework world, we bring our laptops home, we connect to our home networks. You know, we need to understand that our home networks are secure. We need to understand that, you know, we have uh, vulnerability scanning tools on our home network to make sure, because we don't know sometimes who's on our home network or what they're clicking and what are they downloading. And yet again, we're connecting our government laptop to that network. And then we unplug it and take it to the base and we plug it in. So again, I think it's everybody's problem. It doesn't stop at the gate. It needs to go to home and back. But getting to your primary question is about, you know, what do we do with facing human error? And unfortunately, whether it's due to lack of knowledge, understanding, or simple mistakes, common errors and mistakes happen. You know, we see it every day. We do it. I mean, you talk about confessing on an initiative. I wrote software for many years. I'll be the first, and I knowingly um, there was a back door in the system. This was many years ago. We didn't talk about cybersecurity, but you had back doors into your systems because when you got that phone call, say go fix this, you had a way in. Of course, bad standard back then, but that we don't do that today. But anyway, whether it's the user, a developer, a tester, system admin, cybersecurity specialist, like you said, we're human. We make mistakes. However, there are times when we make mistakes that are made due to maybe negligence, or sometimes they're just made due to not knowing. And unfortunately, we see both types, right? Um, for instance, somebody sending passwords in clear text, somebody sending a CUI document to their home email, right? Because they wanted to print it out, that kind of stuff. So it happens. I think people are, you know, trying to get the mission done and to do stuff like that. But we need to learn from those mistakes and we need to get better. Of course, we have those that are, you know, I don't know why they do it, but they pull data from the high side, put it on the low side. And now we've got to wipe out servers and data and everything else. And what I don't think people understand is the time that's involved in those, you know, in those mistakes. It happens.
Yeah.
But a lot of times those mistakes, those mistakes cause people to get their accounts blocked. We have to go to, you know, to the AMAC to get it unblocked. And I've had as long as, you know, it taken me almost 14 days to get somebody's account unblocked just because of the process. Sometimes normally it takes 2 to 3 days, but even that's you know, not only have we had and I'll say a minor incident, but we've had loss of revenue, right? We've had people sitting there and they still get paid. And so I think that's something we need to start taking into consideration in the future. The other part too is I think people make mistakes just when they're stressed and sometimes unclear processes, right? Again, you know, somebody sent it to their home network or something like that. That was just because they're trying to get something done and they probably have a time constraint and they don't realize that, you know, they're going to email it to themselves or what have you, and it's not encrypted. So those are the kinds of things we got to be careful of. Um, and we're all aware of the fact that, you know, I talked about training, and I think a lot of this goes back to how we train individuals, but, you know, we all spend that 1 hour every year doing our cybersecurity CBT. And if you've done it many times, you can just about do it with your eyes closed, right? We just try to get through it, check the box and go on. I think there's other opportunities for us to engage in more training and create maybe real-time activities. For instance, phishing. Phishing is a big thing. There's ways that we can, send out phishing attacks to our own people and then score them on whether or not they identify as a phishing scheme and it's kind of like keeping people on their toes. They get to learn from it. And not only is it good for us as government entities, but it also helps themselves on their own home network. And again, even though they're separated, in my opinion, they're somewhat connected because we attach that network.
Yeah.
Some of the other challenges we see, was you going to ask a question, John?
Well, I was just going to say that's like an organizational pop quiz right there. If you get an email and you
Yeah.
decide, am I going to open this or not? That's I won't tell anybody. Okay, that's
Well, exactly. For example, I've seen an example of one. They I won't say how they did it, but it was like, it came from somebody with a great name. Said, "Hey, Military Appreciation Day. Click this link, you get a free pizza from Pizza Hut." Hey, who wouldn't want to get a free pizza from Pizza Hut, right? I mean, but that's and up, if we talk about AI, we may go into more deep, but AI is ramping up that game. It's getting smarter. It's looking for what's on your network that you've clicked. We store cookies on our systems, and so AI is starting to look at that and say, hey, this guy's really interested in X, Y, and Z. Let's build a phishing scheme that's very specific to what they've been targeting.
wow.
So it's getting challenging, and people have to really step up their game to understand what they're up against. I'm going to go back to the other challenges I see. In our realm of cybersecurity, and when we're maybe improperly implementing or performing cybersecurity requirements, and I think that just stems from the lack of, on training and maybe improperly interpreting guidance and instructions, right, from whether it's NIST 853 or from AFI instructions. Sometimes we get going so fast that we don't understand what we're actually looking for or what the instructions are trying to tell us. I think the government and industry has done a good job to building NIST documentation. We use RMF. Half the community doesn't like RMF, the other half embraces RMF, and RMF is the risk management framework we use to kind of do that. The assessment: are you doing the right things in your application or devices or whatever that we're checking? And sometimes we don't understand what they're asking for, and we sidestep that. And that puts an burden on what we're trying to protect, what people are trying to do, and kind of leaves us open. And I put that in the realm of mistake, because again, I think we can overcome that with maybe some additional training and what have you, and maybe adopt what some of the industry partners are doing. For instance, you hear about, well, you got to get your cybersecurity certification, SEC Plus or CISSP or CISSM. And for a while, they were saying, well, if you got that, you're golden. You could become a cybersecurity professional. But what people are realizing is that because you passed an exam doesn't mean that you're mature enough to go do the things by yourself. And so what industry is starting to do, and I'm starting to see, is yes, they still use the cybersecurity certificate as a focus, but some of the agencies, when they're starting to hire people, they're starting to require hands-on testing. Can you actually perform the work? I know of one government agency, and I think it's Homeland Security, but I have to go back and double check. You have to actually go through 4 tests before you get to an interview state. There's a couple tests you do at home. They actually send you to a proctored site to where you get proctored and monitored. And I think just right before the interview, they actually give you one, and that they use in the interview for you to take the interview. So it's interesting that the complexity, these, agencies, and Homeland Security is not the only one, and industry is picking up on this too, is that they want to know that you can do the work and that you're whatever position they're hiring you for, that you're mature enough. So, so circle back. I think when you talk about sometimes we deal with mistakes, stuff like that. I think that falls into a couple different realms, right? Whether it's negligence and we just don't care, or we just don't know, or we just don't have the experience and we end up causing mistakes, which then impacts, because I'm going back to now that could lead to a security breach or a security incident. And now we got to spend a lot of time doing forensics, doing the analysis, going back and get permission to turn the accounts back on or turn the application back on and start processing data. So I kind of rambled on that one, but I think mistakes fall into a number of areas. But I do believe, we are human. We make mistakes, and so that 88% doesn't really doesn't surprise me, if you will.
Yeah. Well, just hearing some of the things you're talking about, something as simple as emailing yourself from the office to the home, I think most people would even give that a second thought. If you had 2 or 3 items of do nots, don't do's, what would you say to some of our team? Be sure you don't do this. It's probably outside of something you've ever thought about, but just some security.
Yep. Some of the biggest things I see just from the everyday teammates at BES is doing stuff just like you said, right? Emailing themselves without encrypting that email. Everybody assumes that we're on the AFNet, it's encrypted, which is true, right? We use TLS and we encrypt it. But if you send it outside to your corporate office, to your personal account, anything like that, it's not encrypted. So now those that are monitoring you, like the 690th Air Force or the 33rd or like that, as soon as they see that going to an external point that's not encrypted, you're going to get popped, your account's going to get blocked, and the team's going to spend a lot of time doing the forensics. And oh, by the way, that 1 hour CBT, you're going to have to take that again, along with any remediation that your company imposes on. So that's one of them. The other thing is, if you're not sure about a process or you see a cybersecurity incident, you just need to raise the question. Most programs within BES, they have a ISSO or ISSM support team. We have site leads, whether it's Joint Base San Antonio, or Wright Pat, or Gunner. Reach out to somebody and ask the question, because that hour it takes to ask that question, what have you, may save 5, 10, 50 hours down the road,
Right.
and keep somebody from exposing our data.
Wow. That's a lot to think about. Really good stuff. So moving on, kind of in that same realm, as an organization, what are some of the common threats that we're facing?
So this is interesting. Let's see. First of all, I'm kind of chuckling, right? Because it's really that question that it's what we don't know, right? Those are the threats that we can do a lot of things. For the threats we know about, we probably have remediation activities to help with those. Yeah. It's the threats we don't know. And I bring that up because, we in BES have been writing software for many, many years. Okay? And we've been scanning, and this is near and dear to our heart, because if you hear me talk to MITS or at other forums, I talk about open source libraries, and so we're going to hear about it again. We, several years ago we started scanning, and it was really just a static code scan for what our development teams had developed, and they would run the scans, fix the issues, and go forth. Well, again, we didn't know what we didn't know, and now our tools have evolved. The same tool we ran 2 years ago now has capability to run an open source analyzer. And so we're using that capability to scan our codes for other vulnerabilities. And what we've seen initially was, oh my, wow. all shucks, because it had opened up another avenue of potential vulnerabilities or threats that we weren't aware of. And we've been doing this for many, many years.
Yeah.
So now these tools, they're enabling us and providing us insights to the source code we've never seen before. And so we're starting to use the tools to scan the open source libraries. We've identified several outdated libraries, that we've been carrying those threats, and I do air quotes, for many, many years. We didn't have a knowledge that we were bringing in some of these interdependencies from other libraries into our baseline. So again, I chuckle because, when you talk about, common threats, this has been a common threat we've had for many, many years. We just didn't know it. What's interesting though, is now the tools are evolving, right? And we're starting to be able to use this capability to get to some of the problems. And so what we didn't have 2 years ago, I'm going to be interested in see what we have able to overcome in the next 6 months, 12 months, or a year from now. And see if we can't, fix some of these threats that we have in our systems or vulnerabilities. Another new one, everybody's probably heard about it, was the SBOMs, right? Again, that kind of correlates to open source libraries, and that's SBOMs, the software bill of materials. And so we've had a team under GBE that's been kind of working through that, and they have some tools and they have some other capabilities that they're piloting today to help understand that. And that really kind of tells us, not only do we know where the open source library is in our system, but maybe where it was developed, and are there any rogue contributors to that open source library. Rogue, I mean, as far as adversary.
Right.
The new one that's, I was just reading about the other day is HBOMs, is the hardware bill of materials. In our enterprise, we use a number of hardware devices. And so, if you stay up with Cisco, they're constantly being bombarded with, not vulnerabilities, but being under attack. So they're constantly updating but those are things that kind of we weren't really considering 2 years ago, but now they're on our forefront. Mm-hmm. And so these are the common threats we've got to overcome. The other ones, I think, we have the same issues that we just have to get better at, right? We don't necessarily patch at the frequency we need to. Sometimes we have patches or libraries that are outdated. And other common threats are like misconfigurations of some of our components. Again, we talked about phishing. I think, that's another threat that we really have to start taking seriously. A lot of people, they get attacked and maybe they don't know, or maybe they're too embarrassed to report it, so that the forensics can be done on their devices before they bring it back to the AFNet. So, yeah, gosh, common threats, I think they're all over the board. The ones that we don't know are the ones that scare me.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what's there. But what you see in the news lately, and a lot of companies are really complying with, and they're getting after it, is 0-day vulnerabilities, right? You see that sometimes in Apple or Google or Microsoft or what have you, and they're very proactive to saying, hey, we've been exploited in this area. Here's the patch. You need to do this immediately. And I think those are things that we need to take very serious and go apply the patch or whatever is part of that 0-day vulnerability. And sometimes it's not just, again, our laptop from work. We need to apply those at home as well to protect ourselves at home. So there's a number of threats we could probably talk about, but yeah, that's kind of what's near and dear to the heart right now.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier AI. That's the big topic for anybody, even the most common lay person that doesn't know anything. AI is the discussion today. So how is AI being used both in attacks and in response when it comes to cybersecurity?
Whew, man, those two little letters, right? AI, that's big. And to be honest, it scares me.
Okay.
But also I'm looking forward to how it's going to help improve our cybersecurity posture, right? I think we need to be, well, let's say we're already working with AI, right, to help drive better cybersecurity postures and resilience in BES. It's a small step, but there's a pilot underway, and we have a couple more user stories queued up so that as we can get through this to understand AI and the capabilities and what it can do to help us. I think I'm looking forward to enable AI to help better understand and maybe faster identify some of our risk in our systems. You know, before I was talking about scanning tools, we couldn't do that on our own, but the tools have evolved and now we're getting more information. I think AI is going to be in that same thing and it can do it quicker, right? I think it can introduce automated security monitoring. So if there's an alert, we don't have to wait for it to be in a queue for somebody to identify it. Uh, uh, we can use a tool to help that. Um, I think we can use AI to, overcome some of our weaknesses and some of our activities that we need to, and I use the term mitigate, right? But to get us in a better posture. Um, so that's on that side. I think on the flip side of the coin, I think AI can better perform better reconnaissance, right?
Mhm.
Um, which is on the bad for us, right? They're going to learn our systems faster. They're going to probably develop better phishing schemes. They may be able to automate exploitations that we weren't even considering from a human aspect. Um, and we're talking about AI using to help us write source code. Well, in that same sense, AI can probably develop better malicious scripts and install itself to become the man in the middle, right? So that now they have not only, internal access, but they have access to all the data, and now they can manipulate that data. And oh, by the way, in our ransomware attacks, they download all the data. Well, if AI is that smart, it doesn't have to download all the data. It just needs to take the data that's relevant, So that's the part that scares me, right? There's so many aspects of AI that scares me, but there's so many aspects of AI I can't wait to embrace.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, what we need to do from the government side. We don't need to give up on AI because we're scared of it. I think we need to embrace it to understand the capability and how we can quickly use it to our advantage without, kind of destroying ourselves within. Because I think there's the good and the bad, the pros and cons. So I think um, GBZ, Bill Kramer, we are embracing AI. We're starting some small pilots, but in the back of my neck, as the hair starts to grow, well, I don't have any hair, I'm bald. But anyway, you get the drift. The fact that we
Yeah.
have to be conscious of it because our adversaries are going to use it against us, and we have to understand
Yeah.
what those threats are and be on the lookout for them.
That's really good stuff. Because AI is not the problem. It's the user behind AI.
Absolutely.
How can we, as the good guys, work it to our advantage? I love that. So just lastly, let's get ready to wrap up here. Is there anything you want to say to the BES community in regards to cybersecurity? What would your words of wisdom be?
Um, yes. Okay, you gave me the podium, the soapbox. Let's just start back to what we talked about. All members of BES should be conscious of some aspect of cybersecurity and their role that they play with regards to cybersecurity as we develop software products, right? That software development lifecycle is there's cybersecurity sprinkled throughout, whether we start with requirements, business impact analysis. We just have to be conscious of that. So this is not a cybersecurity is not a black box. We need to make sure everybody's engaged in it. We need to understand cybersecurity to make business decisions with regards to software architecture, development activities, and in our final product, right? The functional requirement. Cybersecurity may impact some of that as we look at requirements, and I can go down different paths, right? Whether it's an interface that we send data to, do we really need that interface? Is the interface encrypted or that kind of stuff, right? And somebody needs to make that decision early on and not wait to the very end. But more importantly, if within the cybersecurity professional, we talk about not just the three things I talked about earlier. We also talk about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And those are three key items, or they call it the CIA triad, right? That even the program manager, the user, the requirements owner, the developer, the tester, everything should be conscious about what we're doing and how that could possibly impact those three things: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Because we get breached or we have an issue, what's it going to do to our data? So overall, going back, cybersecurity should be a team sport, especially within BES, right? Everybody has a little piece. And again, if you don't understand your role in that, or if you don't understand where you fit in the bigger picture, or if you have a question on cybersecurity, please come and ask somebody within the GBZ team, right? Your site leads, your O's and M's. If they don't know, ask them to find out, because again, this is a team sport and impacts all of us. And I'll go back to what I started earlier. It's not just the government systems or the government laptops. It impacts us personally because we're trading personal information, we're trading financial information, health information, and you may be trading it on your home network. So it all plays as one big, BES enterprise. So cybersecurity, team sport.
Love it. That's a great perspective there. So,
thanks, John.
Well, to everybody, thank you for tuning in to the BES Mission Success Podcast. At BES, we run the systems that run the Air Force, moving money, manpower, and materiel. Until next time, good day.